If a mayoral candidate polling at 1% drops out, does it make a difference in the race? Tonight, the first candidate to call it quits. Few jails in Colorado work with immigration agents. Democrats want to make it none. The governor orders oil and gas to make major emissions cuts and do it fast. The developers behind the Park Hill Golf Course plan ask for critics suing them to be silenced by a court. An alternative to the typical self-defense class, it is for and by Coloradans who might be perceived as easier targets.
It feels just very, pure and peaceful and safe.
All that tonight on Next. There has been a dropout in the race for Denver mayor, so the field goes from 17 candidates to 16. Tattered Cover CEO Kwame Spearman is ending his campaign after his hardline stances on homelessness and immigration failed to get traction. He's endorsing another center-right candidate for mayor, Kelly Brough. Spearman entered the race pretty late in January. He argued that neighborhoods should have more control over city policy. He said that unhoused people are exploiting the system. And he falsely claimed that a survey of people experiencing homelessness in Denver showed that most of them didn't want a home. The survey actually found the exact opposite. Nearly all of them wanted homes. Spearman is encouraging his supporters to instead vote for Kelly Brough. Like Spearman, Brough is pledging to forcibly clear homeless encampments and arrest people who refuse offers of shelter or treatment. Spearman polled at about 1% in the Survey USA poll that was commissioned by 9 News and our partners at Colorado Politics, Denver Gazette, and MSU Denver. His name stays on the ballot, but once he files a withdrawal form, votes for him won't be counted. Spearman took a leave of absence from the Tattered Cover as the bookstore chain dealt with customers publicly saying that they were done shopping there because of Spearman's political stances. We asked Spearman today if he is returning to Tattered Cover and whether he's planning a bid for Denver School Board at large in November. Spearman said that he would answer those questions if he could come on next for another interview. We declined. Spearman was one of only 2 candidates in the race for Denver mayor to suggest that the city should resume cooperation with ICE. Right now, jails in Colorado can only help immigration agents detain undocumented immigrants if the jail has a specific agreement with ICE. Democrats in the state legislature want to get rid of those deals. Our Luis de Leon found there aren't many to begin with.
When someone is released from the ICE detention facility in Aurora, they could find themselves getting help from Andrea Loya and her team.
A lot of them have gone through really traumatic things in their own countries, which has led them to look for a better life here.
She's executive director of the nonprofit Casa de Paz. For years, they've provided a safe space for immigrants released from the facility while they work on where to go next, helping 29 people just this past Tuesday alone.
It just means that those people don't have to sleep in an ICE detention facility that night.
Depending on where an immigration arrest in Colorado is made, there's a chance that they could be held in another jail before being taken to Aurora. That's because of what's called an Intergovernmental Service Agreement, IGSA for short. Basically, it's when ICE gets help from another facility with detainment. According to ICE, there are just 2 agreements in Colorado, in Teller and Moffat counties. Democratic state lawmakers want to do away with that. A bill looks to restrict state or local governments in Colorado from entering into an agreement with ICE and receiving payment to help detain immigrants, among other things. The bill argues in part that the agreements are an inappropriate exercise of a state's police powers.
So what this law does, in essence, is it's limiting the bandwidth that we have.
John Fabricatori is retired now, but was director of Denver's field office for ICE until last summer. He testified against the bill and argues that another jail being able to help the agency helps with bed space at the Aurora facility and is safer for ICE agents.
When you have such a huge state like Colorado that you're dealing with, and all the aspects of the environment, the mountains, the weather, all these other things, we really needed those other jails as kind of halfway points to get the cases to Aurora.
But Loya thinks otherwise.
So there's ways that we can spend that money better and actually provide folks with a better way to do these things.
So back in 2019, former Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin was very vocal about not assisting ICE with detaining. And Kyle, Fabricatori was around back then. Today he acknowledged that the number of agreements in our state is obviously very small, but he argues that the demand for this fluctuates so much that he says it's really about just having the ability to have the opportunity to get help from local government agencies when needed.
This debate, goes way back, Luis. I remember more than a decade ago when Colorado State Patrol had an agreement with the feds where they would work on the interstates with ICE. That is long gone, and as you point out, just a couple of dwindling municipalities' jurisdictions still want to work directly.
Just last month, we saw the district court there take the side of Teller County to even allow that agreement to happen.
That was a big win for the folks who want to work with ICE,
right.
But they won there in Teller. All right, Luis, thank you. Colorado is one step closer to having waiting periods for gun purchases. The bill pushed by Democrats has made it through the state House today, past the Senate committee. The bill would require a 3-day waiting period for all gun purchases. This is part of a package of gun control legislation that Democrats are running this session. Today, as a state Senate committee debated the bill, heard testimony from several students from East High School. East students have been really vocal in their calls for action since their classmate, 16-year-old named Luis Garcia, was killed outside school last month. They marched on the Capitol weeks ago in support of gun control legislation, and today they told lawmakers that a 3-day cooling off period before somebody could buy a gun might save lives.
The fear that my friends and my school feel is very real. 2 students have been shot at or near East High School since September. 1 dead. That is too many. Kids should not have to grieve their own classmates. Waiting periods would ensure harder access to guns and more time to not make same-day decisions and could potentially save a life and a kid.
The committee passed the bill without changes, now goes to the full Senate. Colorado's oil and gas companies have just 2 years to make major cuts to their emissions. Today, Democratic Governor Jared Polis ordered regulators to come up with new rules monitoring the release of nitrogen oxide. EPA identifies that as a major contributor to ozone production. Energy companies have until 2025's ozone season to make a 30% reduction from where the levels were in 2017. Governor also wants a 50% cutback by 2030. The head of Colorado's Oil and Gas Association says those cuts will be, quote, a challenge to achieve. Governor pointed out that the industry already has the technology. He said that cutting emissions can offset the sanctions that the industry will face for not meeting EPA Clean Air Act standards.
One of those penalties that is being talked about is could potentially raise the cost of gas at the pump. We want to avoid that. We think better ways to get there make drilling cleaner, which we're doing.
Governor Polis says Colorado is the first state in America to create a comprehensive nitrogen oxides reduction program. Earlier this week, the EPA told 23 states, not Colorado, 23 states that they had to come up with those plans over the next few years. The investors who want to develop Park Hills Golf Course, currently open space, want to keep information about an ongoing lawsuit under wraps as voters are deciding the future of that land in a few weeks. Westside Investment Partners and the Holleran Group, the developers who own the course, are currently facing a lawsuit from a nonprofit group that was renting the golf course's clubhouse. That group, Sisters of Color United for Education, says the developers want to make too many changes to their lease and demanded too much access to the space that's supposed to be used by the community. Today, attorney for the developers asked a judge for a gag order in the case. They want to keep depositions from becoming publicly available until the trial in May. That would keep the record sealed through Election Day, when Denver residents will vote on whether to lift a conservation easement and allow that property to be developed. Judge didn't go for the gag order, but did give developers a 3-day window after future depositions to request that the contents be sealed until the trial. Future depositions are scheduled March 29th and the 30th, so it means that if those depositions are released, it'll be right before Election Day. A January 31st deposition of a former Holleran Group employee has already been made public. Westward first reported what was in there. The claim that the billionaire Robert Smith grew up around here has contributed more than $8 million to that development. Your next question is a good one. What came first, the Suncor refinery and its pollution, or all the houses full of neighbors complaining about the emissions? And this self-defense class is not for men. It's not taught by men either. That's next. Tonight's next question is a frequent one that we get whenever we cover the concerns of residents living near the Suncor refinery in Commerce City. Viewer Carol asks, who is there first, Suncor or the neighborhood? Carol, that is a good question. The refinery was first built in 1931. A lot of development has taken place since then, but plenty of the homes nearby are older than the refinery. She mentioned Suncor didn't come into the picture until they bought it in 2003. So according to the Commerce City Historical Society, the very first homes in Commerce City date all the way back to 1850, so they're long gone and replaced. But by the time the refinery was built, Farmers had already moved down into the Sand Creek area. There's a railroad running along the South Platte. And there were a couple of neighborhoods in Denver today that are impacted by the refinery that do predate its building. So think like the Globeville neighborhood, the El Rio Swansea neighborhoods. They were incorporated in Denver in the late 1800s, so decades before the refinery was built. A nonprofit called Friendship Bridge is based in Lakewood. The women it serves are thousands of miles away. They're in Guatemala. Friendship Bridge wants to bridge the gap for those women, helping them access financial resources and potential customers.
Guatemala is like a very unequal country. So that's why we decided to invest in the women, because it's proven that 90% of the income that the woman makes goes back to the family. My name is Marta Julia Cook. I work full-time for Friendship Bridge for the past 16 years in Guatemala.
Dos varones y tres mujeres.
Friendship Bridge is a nonprofit social enterprise that creates opportunity that empower Guatemalan women to build a better life. We do this using the tools of microfinance, education, and health services to support our women in Guatemala.
6 cilindros, la que yo manejo.
Just by 2022, we served more than 33,000 women in Guatemala with these programs. This is our showroom in Lakewood, Colorado. It's called Handmade by Friendship Bridge, which are made for artisan women. These ones are made from Jacinta. Jacinta is from the center highlands of Guatemala. Jacinta also not only employs her family, but many people in her community. So basically she provides jobs to other women, to all the families in her community. So we are like impacting not only one woman, one family, but a community. I grew up in a poor family, so I know the situation. I understand how we're changing these lives. Our hope is like the next generation can have better opportunities. That's why we invest in the women, so they can also build resilience and move forward. My biggest hope is to change more lives, to go and our clients can have more opportunities, so their children can also have access to new opportunities in the future and change Guatemala at some point.
Friendship Bridge operates 11 branch offices in Guatemala. Clients are all women, primarily indigenous Maya, and they live in rural communities that have some of the highest poverty rates in the world.
After a day in the 70s yesterday, winter certainly making a comeback across Colorado. Up into the high country, they were looking at close to a foot of fresh snowfall around Crested Butte, the mountain out there, Loveland Pass, looking at 10 inches around the city. Westminster, Arvada, looking at about an inch and a half at best. We picked up 1.5 out at DIA, and that is our grand total so far for the month of March. Here we are halfway through, and all we have seen, and really not a ton of snow in the extended forecast. Tonight we're watching some clearing and maybe even a little blue skies out there if you squint. As we look on the radar tonight, most of the action is into southern Colorado as the storm system has been pushing from the north further to the south. Maybe a few lingering showers around Douglas County toward Monument Hill up into the foothills. Otherwise, we're going to be watching everything winding down late tonight, including these advisories and the warnings. Most of the snowfall has already hit the ground. As we look at the futurecast, this will take us to 11 o'clock tonight. Mostly cloudy skies here in Denver, but we will be watching for some clearing, especially by early tomorrow morning for your Friday, for your St. Patrick's Day. Don't forget to wear that green. We'll be looking pretty good, but the temperatures are going to be on the cooler side with just a few lingering snow showers around the south central mountains. Temperatures tomorrow in the low 40s around the metro area, 30s, and some spots in the mid-20s up into the mountains. We'll hit 42 on Saturday, low 50s with a few clouds for us on Sunday, and then looking ahead toward Monday in the spring season, it should be seasonal. Right now I have a chance for a rain-snow mix Tuesday and Wednesday of next week.
It's a safe space that also involves punching.
You can walk away feeling like maybe a little more confident, a little stronger to walk about in the world.
A group teaching self-defense to Coloradans who might be particular targets. That's next. This Women's History Month, we caught up with a group of women determined to make anybody who messes with them history themselves. Our Ann Herbst takes us to class on the campus of MSU Denver.
We're going to learn some things today that are really amazing, really empowering tools.
March is when the calendar says,
Yeah!
celebrate women.
Get ready.
Austin Dempers is a little underwhelmed.
Yeah, I always say, I'm like, just a month, really? Shouldn't we be doing this all the time?
She lifts up women every single day.
Don't worry about her. I'm sure she's really great and nice, but we're hitting the pad. Nice.
Austin owns Fire and Root Collective in Denver.
And we offer self-defense and yoga classes, and all of our classes are just designed for women and genderqueer humans. For me, when I was looking for self-defense classes and offerings, it was all classes taught by very talented humans, but a lot of cisgendered white men, and it didn't feel safe for me to have those people telling me what to do with my body.
If you guys are the ones reaching, you need to hang on.
The Fire and Root crew
Straight right punch.
spreads their message at their space in Whittier.
Okay, so we're gonna try to teach you the fighting part first.
And places like MSU Denver, which included them on their Women's History Month lineup.
All right, so up.
Having skills on how to protect and defend myself.
It's not gonna feel good to get a knee.
I don't want to scream and run like a girl.
Like, your body's designed to have your back. I promise you that.
Austin's fight to understand her own power is a story many women share.
So I was assaulted 5 years ago, and I also grew, I have a lot of childhood sexual trauma in my life, unfortunately. So, which is why I started seeking out self-defense classes, and I was like, this can't be it. There has to be a better way.
A different way of looking at strength.
Let's see what you got.
Confidence, and what it means to be a woman in March and beyond.
2, good job.
For next,
One more.
this is Ann Herbst.
3, yeah, dude, you got it.
Austin estimates that she's helped about 1,000 women and genderqueer people since she started Fire and Root Collective. The car elevator in Denver. Oh, no, not the long empty Carvana tower along I-25. There was one before that. That and your feedback next. On this Throwback Thursday, next viewers offer a historical counterpart to that long empty Carvana tower that we've had so much fun with lately. Several people have sent us this photo of a car elevator in downtown Denver in the 1970s. Judging by the photo, it was having a bit of a malfunction up in the top part there. You can see Brown Palace is kind of right there behind it for context on where it is in town. Of course, not as shiny and flashy as that 8-story Carvana tower that's sitting on prime real estate at I-25 and Evans, and now finally is filled with cars as that company tries to stay afloat. I guarantee you, if a car falls off the top layer onto the second, Steve Steger's going to be all over that like white on rice. Sue writes in, wondering where the Friendship Bridge location in Lakewood is that we mentioned earlier in the newscast, and the days and times they're open. Sue, they are at 405 Urban Street. They're right by Wright Park, and they are open 8 to 5. Monday through Friday. Tom asked, did the original residents living around the refinery that's now Suncor oppose it when it was being planned, or did they embrace it happily for the jobs that would come? I can't tell you, Tom, because that was 1931, and that is shortly before I started working here. My guess is that it was probably a mixed bag, knowing human nature, and knowing what we now know about nature and pollution. I'd say we have a touch more information today. We'll see you next time.